one in the royal line. This is the reason David becomes king. Because Saul would not wait. Because Saul did not want to surrender control to the Lord. Because Saul wanted to keep control for himself. Saul did not want to wait for Samuel to show up. Because Saul didn't understand the situation. He took matters into his own hands, and in so doing, lost everything. Saul lost his faith, and it ended up ruining his life. Faith trusts. Faith trusts. Faith trusts God's control. Faith trusts that God knows what he's doing better than you do. Do you believe God knows better than you? Well, if you don't, he does. But faith trusts that God knows what he's doing. But Saul chose to trust himself rather than the Lord. He chose to trust his own timing rather than God's timing. And he completely messed everything up. By contrast, though, Moses' parents trusted God completely with the life of their own son. How many of us, if we were in the boat of Moses' parents, would have tried to just sneak out of Egypt, like under cover of darkness, get out of the danger? The situation arises, our child's under threat of life, we're just going to leave and not be here anymore. But God had a purpose in them staying. So they trusted God's wisdom, and they stayed. God protected their son. Ends up, Moses escorts the entire nation out of slavery some 80 years after this. We're going to jump over actually to a reference to this in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 23. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hidden for 3 months by his parents, because they saw that the child was beautiful, and they were not afraid of the king's edict. So we see there in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 23, it wasn't just the fact that they liked their child that they protected him. They did it, as stated in Scripture, by faith. By faith, they protected their child. By faith, they hid him, and God protected him. It was by faith that they did not fear what the king had issued. It was by faith they knew that God was going to take care of it. By faith, they completely trusted God. And their complete trust in the Lord, that decision, it ultimately led to the freeing of their nation because of the faith of one set of parents. See, because faith really is confidence in the Lord's intervention. Faith is confidence in the Lord's intervention. But you may say, sitting there in your seat, say, I've had faith many times, but what about when the Lord's intervention is not what I expected? You may actually be thinking, what about the times the Lord doesn't intervene? But I'll rephrase it and say, what if the Lord's intervention isn't what you expect? Comes in a way that doesn't meet your expectations? Because honestly, the Lord doesn't have to prove himself to you. But his intervention comes differently than what we thought. Here's a situation when that very thing happened. Daniel chapter 3. Here's 3 guys from the nation of Israel, descendant from the one man Israel. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego have defied the king. And the king's going to throw them in a fiery furnace. And they answer the king when he's going to throw them in the furnace. And they say to him, O Nebuchadnezzar, that's the king, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. And then here's the great statement of faith. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. So, faith is confidence in the Lord's intervention. And then we look at verse 18, but if not, if the Lord doesn't intervene like what I anticipate, if the Lord doesn't intervene like what I expect, if God doesn't do exactly what I want him to do, will I still have faith? If the answer is no, then it's not really faith. If the answer is no, then you don't have faith in God. You have faith in God doing what you want. You really have faith in yourself. Faith in God is trusting the Lord no matter what. That means even if he does something that I'm not necessarily a fan of in the moment because it hurts. Even if it happens in a way that I don't understand everything that encompasses that decision. And I may not until heaven. And when we get to heaven, it won't really matter because we're seeing the face of Jesus. Faith is confidence in the Lord's intervention. But faith also perseveres, even when the Lord intervenes differently from how we expect. Faith endures, faith perseveres. But it's in that perseverance that the problem often comes up. Because when we have confident faith in something, and that thing doesn't happen, our faith often will falter. And it will shake a little bit. Sometimes quite a lot. But faith like that is not in God himself. When our faith falters because the situation doesn't turn out exactly like we want it to, we have more faith in our anticipated outcome than in the God we should be placing our faith into. You see, true faith doesn't depend upon God meeting my expectations. Let me say it again. True faith doesn't depend upon God meeting my expectations. Because here's the deal. My expectations are flawed. You know why? Because I'm flawed. And so everything I touch is laced with my sin nature. And so any expectation that I would have of God is covered with my own sin. When I don't accept something that God does because I don't like it, that's my own sin. Honestly, it's pride saying I know better than God. And I've done that. And God, I don't understand why you did. God, if you would have done it this way, God, I would have done it like this, God, like for real. God, yeah, I'm not going to say, God, you messed it up because, in my mind, I can't say that. I'm arguing with myself, but I'm thinking, oh, my word. It really would have been a lot easier in my life if God would have done it this way. Really, honestly, we would all think this. If every human being in my life was perfectly healthy and they all lived to 120 and then just dropped dead and never got sick, and I had $1 bajillion in the bank and owned the world, then everything would be perfect. And everybody did exactly what I wanted. Then it would just be awesome. Everybody just thought like I thought and acted like I want them to act, drive like I want them to drive, charged at the store what I think they should actually charge at the store, do in government what they're supposed to be doing in government according to my opinion. If they would coach my favorite football team like they should coach my favorite football team, then the Dallas Cowboys would win the Super Bowl every year.